Now, May 9th is a significant date in Russia's military calendar. Victory Day celebrates the Soviet defeat of the Nazis in World War II. Traditionally, it's marked by bombastic and patriotic military parades in Moscow. This year, the focus is likely to be on the parade to deflect attention from Russia's sluggish campaign in Ukraine. Rehearsals in Moscow are already underway.
If you stroll around Moscow's tourist district, among the stereotypical Russian souvenirs, you can now find the letter Z printed everywhere. It's merchandise in support of Russia's, quote, special military operation, the only name allowed for the war in Ukraine. In the city centre, tanks and rocket launchers roll towards the Kremlin, while Russian soldiers fight on the front line in Ukraine. It's a rehearsal for the May the 9th Victory Day parade, which for many is an annual spectacle. But this year, everything is different.
This is indeed a holiday, but it's one with tears in the eyes, because now is the time to think about the irretrievable losses that have been suffered. I love my country very much. I'm not ashamed to be Russian. I like our president very much because he protects us. I don't want to offend anyone, but Putin is a president for the world. I love him.
The parade is also a grand show of patriotism. No one here dare criticise what is happening in Ukraine right now.
No comment. I support my country. That's all I can say.
The parade, which celebrates victory over Nazi Germany, will be smaller this year. Fewer soldiers, only around 11,000, and fewer special effects. But Vladimir Putin could use the day to mobilise more troops. As Moscow gets dressed up for its big day, this will be a 9th of May like no other.
Well, May 9th is always a big day for Russia, but what message is Moscow likely to deliver this year? A formal declaration of war, a national mobilization of reservists, or even the end of fighting in Ukraine? Russia's President Vladimir Putin is due to give a speech on Monday, which could have a significant impact on the developments in this war. Let's bring in DW's head of fact-checking here, Yosha Weber. Yosha, you and your team are tracking and debunking war propaganda coming from the Kremlin. Based on that, what kind of announcement are you expecting on May 9th?
Very good question, Terry. There is a lot of speculation about this day and about the Russians' tragedy more broadly. Based on recent propaganda claims he made and military operations in Ukraine, it's likely that President Putin will use the Kremlin's victory in Mariupol and the territorial gains in eastern Ukraine as proof that this tragedy succeeded. And we expect him to unite Russians behind the goal of completely liberating the Donbas and Luhansk regions. That would mean the war would continue.
Now, one reason given by President Putin for his so-called special military operation in Ukraine was the need to, in his terms, denazify the country. What are we to make of that claim?
Putin uses the term denazification, which refers to the Allies' policy for Nazi Germany after World War II. But obviously, you can't compare Nazi Germany with democratic Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky is a Russian-speaking Jew. We all know that, which is not something that would be possible in a Nazi state. And let's look at the last parliamentary elections in 2019 in Ukraine, when a united front of all radical right-wing parties won just 2% of the vote. Democratic parties have been dominating the country's political landscape for years now, and even if there were some truth, or is some truth about that, there were some right groups or elements in the famous Azov regiment, that would not prove this claim. There is simply no evidence for a broader Nazi problem with the Ukrainian society, and all this is why 300 international historians published a statement that says the denazification claim by Russia is factually wrong.
Important points there. Another Russian narrative is that its war of aggression is actually an act of self-defense by Russia. Is there any truth to this claim, Yosha?
Well, this claim is absurd because everyone knows that Russia started this war by launching a full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24. There are pictures, videos, satellite images which prove this, so no doubt about this fact. But why do Russians still believe that this aggression is an act of self-defense? Well, because of Russians' efficient propaganda campaign, and that happened via television, radio, and social media. President Putin even claimed that this military operation is in accordance with Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, which allows for self-defense measures. That's wrong for several reasons. First, the two breakaway regions, Donetsk and Luhansk, which Putin wants to defend, are not recognized as states under international law. Second, there's absolutely no evidence for an alleged genocide of the Russian-speaking population there. And third, the massive use of force against installations throughout Ukraine is disproportionate. Question is now, Terry, if you have build a lie that big, what is your exit strategy? Putin must win this war. That is the trap of the Kremlin's own propaganda now. And so this could mean that whatever happens on May 9, it will likely not end Putin's war in Ukraine.
Joscha, thank you very much for your fact-checking, for your insights. That was Joscha Weber, head of DW's fact-checking team. Let's bring in Sam Cranny here. Sam Cranny-Evans, he's an analyst at the Royal United Services Institute. That's a London-based defense and security think tank. Thanks for being with us. Sam, how important is foreign intelligence for the Ukrainian army?
Well, it serves two purposes. The first is it has this political message, this morale-boosting message that the Ukrainians aren't alone and that there are, powerful states willing to back them to quite a significant extent by providing that intelligence. And that would have to come from national assets. So it will be US aircraft and satellites and NATO aircraft and satellites providing that kind of information. In a military sense, it forms part of a picture. So the intelligence on its own, for instance, the Moskva that you just referenced, that would have had to have been paired up with organic real-time intelligence for the Ukrainians to be able to act on it. So it helps cue the Ukrainians onto what might be important or useful targets, but the Ukrainians still have to do, a fair amount of work themselves.
Now, Ukraine's Western partners are stepping up their arms supplies as well. The German government now says it will send howitzers to support the Ukrainian army. What difference will this heavy weaponry make?
Well, in the big picture, Germany's agreed to send 7 self-propelled howitzers, which isn't going to make a huge difference to the totality of Ukraine's battlefield. They probably need, a few hundred howitzers and that kind of thing. Again, it provides that important political message that Ukraine's not on its own and that the West is willing to support it. In a tactical sense, howitzers in general and the provision of artillery is very important for the current phase of the war. The evidence suggests that the Russians are quite happy at the moment to sit behind their long-range artillery and just batter the Ukrainian forces into submission to increase casualties and losses upon the Ukrainian forces. And without additional heavy artillery to replace Ukrainian losses, to additionally support new Ukrainian reserves that are being developed, the Ukrainians can't really fight back against that kind of combat, that kind of tactics. So it's important in the bigger picture, but in terms of the German contribution to it, it's just part of a wider whole.
Right. Yeah, Germany has been reluctant so far and is just to send heavy weapons to Ukraine, but it's now beginning to change its tune. But there's a lot more heavy weapons going into Ukraine from other countries, including the United States. Just a question about how effective those weapons can be for Ukrainian forces to defend their territories in the south and east of the country, given how long it might take to get that heavy equipment there and the need for training.
Yeah, Western systems do introduce a training burden that will be new to the Ukrainians, and they also introduce a logistics and supply burden that will be new to them. So they won't have domestic structures set up to take care of them. But Western forces are providing a lot of support, they're providing a lot of training that will enable the Ukrainians to get these systems into service quite quickly. The important thing to bear in mind is we don't really know where we are in this war. So we might be right at the beginning, we might be close to the end, we don't really know. But the switch to NATO systems actually makes it easier for NATO countries to support them. Certainly more so than the use of former Soviet or Ukrainian standard systems.
Sam, thanks for talking with us. That was Sam Cranny-Evans, an analyst at the Royal United Services Institute.
Thank you.